This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now.
Hello, everybody. Tim Powers here today, Wednesday, April 8th. You know, I always love that introduction where they have to put in the qualifier, and that's important to do because, you know, I could spiral in some direction and the station would not be happy. But I do want to know, I'm going to ask Greg Smith, which views do the station share and which they don't? Greg, just teasing you. Not going to put you through all of that today. Hope everybody's doing well on this Wednesday. All kinds of things going on. But first, how do you spell relief? Well, apparently 1 cent at a time. Yes. The latest fuel prices. I suppose it's better than a pop in the chops, but gas is down by 1 cent this morning. Woo! Diesel dropped 6.5 cents on the island and roughly 7 cents in Labrador West. The price of furnace and stove oil is down by almost 6 cents per liter. The pub says daily price adjustments are expected to continue with frequency. Let me get that word out, Tim. Frequency to be assessed on a weekly basis until further notice. I guess, hey, better than going up. Going down in this case is good. Down 1 cent. We had Dan McTague on yesterday, and as you know, he didn't, just Dan working with data, didn't present a great picture going forward, though, hey, does relief also come in the form of tacos? Anybody want some tacos this morning? What's a taco? Well, it's not just that wonderful Latin American Mexican food that many of us do enjoy. It's also Donald Trump. And in this case, well done, Mr. President. Taco. Trump always chickens out. So we wake up today, and thankfully, whether we like Iran or not, and I don't like the state of Iran, I don't like the government of Iran, but the people of Iran, I have no issue directly with them. They're safe. The civilization wasn't wiped out. You remember yesterday, the president was threatening to wipe out an entire civilization. You know, doing Trump, he didn't really want to. He wasn't sure, but, you know, he would do what he had to do. He said a whole civilization will die. Well, they didn't, because the president is supporting a peace plan that has driven by Pakistan that has called for a ceasefire for the next 2 weeks, while the United States and Iran to continue to work on finding a longer-term peace. Much of this is incumbent on the Strait of Hormuz being opened. We'll see how that works. I'm telling you this at what is 9:03 this morning on the island and 8:33 in Labrador. Who knows where we'll be at the end of the show, but at least, you know, use that 1 cent break you got to go get some tacos this morning because the president did his usual taco. And in this case, good. Again, nobody wants Iran to arm. Nobody wants Iran to have nuclear weapons. But we don't need to see a whole civilization wiped out with unclear war plans from the United States. Later on in this show, we're going to find the time to play a conversation I had yesterday with the former Chief of Defense Staff for Canada, not Rick Hillier, but a colleague of Rick's, Tom Lawson, just talking about Trump and that threat of yesterday, and how as a military man and a military leader, how do you act? How do you behave? I think you find it interesting. It was very thoughtfully said by General Lawson, and we talked about the path forward and what does the world look like after this. Anyway, we'll play that conversation a little later on for you. And, of course, love your views on all of that. I had another conversation yesterday. We'll try and get it in, but your calls are the priority today. But that conversation was with a fellow, an economist from the Bank of Montreal, Sal Guattari, talking about the fact that there could be $150 a barrel oil. Now, that may be good in the short term for provincial coffers, but the cost burden that you would bear, according to the economic modeling done by Mr. Guattari and people at BMO, pretty concerning. We'll see if we can get all that in. Anyway, that's all linked to the war. Let's move off for the war. No, one more thing related to that. Sorry. The Prime Minister yesterday said that he is going to look at, or they're looking at, they being the government of Canada, the government he leads, looking at how they might bring in some relief for gas prices. Didn't commit to anything. As I said yesterday, and we'll remind you, there's a federal economic statement coming. There's also a budget coming from the province later in April. I suspect the pressure will mount if the prices stay high for governments to do things where they can do things. So we'll watch all of that for you. So let's park the war and Trump and civilizations being blown up and tacos for now and look at a few things closer to home. Let's start with a couple of stories that I saw on the CBC. On the CBC, as in on the CBC website. This one really concerning, written by Ariana Kelland, a very good journalist. The headline says, neighbors say some NLCH housing units operating with impunity as trap houses. NLC units operating with impunity as trap houses. Let me read from Ariana's report, because this is concerning to me, and this is work she did and the team at CBC did, so trust it for its integrity. Read this paragraph. These paragraphs. CBC News spoke with several people in Greater St. John's area who say they live near problematic NLCH units that are being allowed to operate with impunity as so-called trap houses, havens for drug and criminal activity. They are calling on the Housing Corporation to hold tenants to their lease conditions, which stipulate the tenants must not engage in or facilitate criminal activity or disrupt neighbors' peaceful enjoyment of their property. The young mother, and this is referring to the woman that's not identified because they're protecting our identity that's in the story. The young mother says her first neighbor was arrested and charged following a drug bust, but another tenant moved in soon after, and the same problems continued. Quoting this mother, "It's like a hotel," the woman said. "You don't know who is coming or who is going. It affects my daily living. I'm trying to put hours into work on little to no sleep because the racket they cause." She says there have been many cases of mistaken identity, people showing up at her door with a bag of stolen goods or looking for the tenant next door. Email and call records show the woman has contacted the Housing Corporation with her concerns on multiple occasions, but they say nothing has happened. I don't know about you. I find that pretty concerning. I understand from talking to many police officers on this program and elsewhere that there are resourcing issues. I know the police are stretched. I know we talked to RNC Association President Mike Summers before, and Mike made the point that, they're short-staffed. The number of calls they have are up. So not blaming the police here, but what is NLC doing? If all of this is accurate, if the young woman is to be believed, and again, no reason that she's not. CBC would have vetted this. Why or what types of action are happening? If you are familiar with this, if you know about this, give us a call. We're going to try and follow this a little bit more. And in line with this, also another CBC story, this time by Elizabeth Whitten. Headline reads, "The justice system has been allowed to disintegrate. Lawyers say more support needed." This relates to the Dean Penny trial that was temporarily delayed last week because of lack of sheriff's officers. The justice in the case called it a deplorable state of affairs. We're going to try and get Lynn Moore on, who's talked a lot about this. This is not new, as Lynn has pointed out in this CBC interview. This has been going on for 20 years, but boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Look, I know the government is still relatively new. I know this has been an issue with multiple governments, but why is criminality and lawlessness dominating more of our headlines? How can we get at this? I know people are making efforts, but it seems like we're all feeling a lot less safe. We'll look at those things today. Now, a little bit more positive, and I quite enjoyed this. I'll give credit to the Newfoundland government for seizing the moment here. And what am I talking about? Tourism Minister Andrea Barber's letter to People magazine about how people described us as a frozen island. This, of course, was in response to the story that we've covered extensively here, how a British Airways flight was stranded, and BBC, the cream of the crop of British broadcasters, reported last week that a couple of passengers were frustrated with the way the airline handled the situation and talked about the passengers being fobbed off in freezing cold temperatures. And people dug deeper. They went on and talked about the frozen island. And yeah, like the minister said, the island can get cold from time to time, but don't tell that to Heather McKinnon and all her staff at the Delta Hotel and all the other people I'm sure who helped out here. They did a grand job. So, you know what? Writing to People magazine editor, it's base politics, but it's kind of fun in this circumstance because it drives the story, it pushes the message, and it tells the world, hey, don't you be taking shots at us. And maybe it gets a few more visitors here because it's a version of a story where people took horrible circumstances, and the people who were there to responded with class and dignity and all of those things. And that is something we should be proud of. What do you think about the minister's letter and how it's played out? I am a fan of that. I think it's good politics and the like. You know what? I am going to take a quick break here because we do have Lynn Moore on the line, but I don't want to rush Lynn. I'm going to say we've got Lynn. We've got a bunch of great guests coming up on the program throughout the day. Want your calls. We've got so much to talk about. But let's take our first break here on Open Line, and then we'll talk to Lynn Moore about the state of the justice system. Back with Lynn in a moment here on VOCM. Tim Powers hosting today and the rest of this week. I'm going to quote my guest to my guest. The justice system has been allowed to disintegrate, which I believe is really happening. Justice system is a poor cousin of the government. That is my next guest. That is Lynn Moore. You will know Lynn. Lynn is a well-known St. John's lawyer, long an advocate for reform in the justice system. Lynn, do you sometimes feel like you're howling at the moon and nobody's listening?
Oh, all the time. I really feel like there's my head's being slammed into a brick wall. But I think some people are listening, and I think some changes are going to be made, and I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, let's talk about what happens if changes don't get made. And you referenced this in the Penny case, and a lot of people have been following this case because there is looming over this case and other cases the Jordan application. Tell us about why court slowdowns or systemic slowdowns threaten or challenge public safety.
Well, for two reasons. One is that people will not be tried on their merits if the justice system can't keep up with the timelines that have been set down by the Supreme Court of Canada for when a trial has to conclude. Then those people are found not guilty. They walk, and there's no consequence for their behavior. There's no opportunity for any sort of punishment or reformation, rehabilitation to be imposed on the person. They're gone. But the second thing that no one is really talking about is the safety of the people in the courtroom. I mean, the courts are open to the public. There's lots of people that are working in the courts. And if there are not enough sheriff's officers there to protect people, something could go very, very wrong very fast. And another problem with the question of staff in the justice system is the lack of an ability for the justice system to retain the people that they do hire. Like, people are voting with their feet. They're leaving. And we really need to look at why that is happening. There have been, since Confederation, just a handful of prosecutors that have retired from prosecutions. Most people move on. That's not the case elsewhere in Canada. Elsewhere in Canada, people stay in those positions. They develop a very deep bench. They have very senior people that are available to do the more serious and complex crimes. But in Newfoundland and Labrador, people leave. So we need someone to look at that. Why is that happening? Why are the sheriff's officers leaving? Why is the court struggling so much to find court officers, court clerks, people who work in the registries? They are running on empty, and the people that are working there are exhausted. So there are systemic, huge problems that need to be addressed. And I think part of the problem comes from the fact that the people who manage justice are mostly lawyers who have a particular skill set. They're good at the law. They're not necessarily good at managing huge, complex systems. And we need people with those skill sets.
Well, and you could, that is true, because they can be very different skill sets. Some people have complementary skill sets and they can manage and they can practice the law. Others can't, and they've spent their whole life training for the law, not necessarily for management. Is compensation and safety an issue too for people from your perspective, Lynn?
I think that compensation, I know that the Crown prosecutors recently had a very significant increase, the Crown prosecutors and legal aid lawyers, and I think that has really helped with their recruitment. I don't know if it's going to work with retention, but the other players in the justice system have not had similar bumps. And I know one really strong sticking point, things that makes people feel really disrespected when they work in the criminal justice system in St. John's downtown. They have to pay for their parking.
Yeah.
The judges don't pay for their parking.
Ooh.
And the parking is a lot of after-tax dollars. Like after your income tax comes out, it's very expensive on a yearly basis, and it just makes people feel disrespected. Like, why does person A get their parking paid for and person B doesn't? And I think that lack of respect is something that really bothers people, and they want to move on to places where they do feel respected.
Well, and if you're a sheriff too, to your point about protecting people, they want you to protect people in the courtroom, but they won't give you whatever for parking. Whereas a judge has his or her parking looked after. I get that. That respect thing makes sense. I want to go back to where we started. You did express some optimism. Where does the optimism come from, Lynn? Right after the break here on VOCM's Open Line. Welcome back. Lynn and I were interrupted by the technological gods. Lynn, that happens sometimes too. Thank you for calling back.
No problem.
We were talking about the parking and the respect that some feel is not shown. But what I was asking you before we got cut off is, in the beginning of our conversation, you expressed what I thought was a little bit of optimism. Where does that optimism come from?
Well, it comes from the fact that this is being talked about and that the minister, Conway Ottenheimer, has turned her attention to it. She's formed her working group, and they are tackling the problem. I think they understand the severity of the problem and that it has to be addressed, because really, our society is based on the rule of law. And if we can't have the laws properly adjudicated in the courts, then we're in pretty serious trouble. And it's not just the courts that are struggling. HMP is, it's not fit for animals. And I know a lot of people say, if you don't want to go there, don't commit crimes. But it's actually a very complicated set of circumstances that people, who have mental health and addictions issues, who are perhaps not getting the help they need through the mental health care system, people who are isolated and demoralized by their circumstances with rats crawling all over them and mold growing on the walls. I mean, those people are not going to, get better. They're not going to change their behavior. And the purpose of the justice system, the criminal justice system, is to make life safer. And if having a revolving door at HMP of people coming in and out, the same people coming in and out without actually getting the treatment they need, then we're not going to be safer. We're just going to have more of the same. And we deserve better than that. We deserve a justice system that looks at the root causes of crime and seeks to address them.
Yeah, we still have to be humane. Justice is supposed to be humane, even for the worst offenders. It doesn't mean they live in a country club and do all of the things that get people so very irritated. But my mother's long lived down by that penitentiary. There's huge rat issues, and there have been long stories of rats and all of that. Why would we throw away an entirety of humanity? We can still reform people, we can still punish people, but we don't need to brutalize them. Lynn, great to have you on. Thank you for the work you do, and thank you for highlighting all of these stories. Appreciate talking to you.
Thank you so much, Tim. Bye-bye.
All right, bye. That is Lynn Moore. We're going to go now. I believe we have her to Connie Pike, and Connie is a child safety advocate with Miles for Smiles, and we're going to talk about social media bans. Connie, we talked a little bit yesterday about what Saskatchewan is proposing to do, and just to remind people, the Premier of Saskatchewan, Scott Moe, is going to launch a consultation with the people of that province to determine if they should follow a path similar to what Australia has chosen with a social media ban for kids under 16. Now, that comes with all kinds of different caveats, of course. Your take on that and how a province, could enforce such a thing?
Well, Tim, before we get into that subject, which I don't think I can cover appropriately enough or fully enough in a few minutes, to be quite honest, I'd like to share with you our court numbers,
Sure.
the child abuse cases for March month. These are all cases listed on the court dockets in the 10 provincial courtrooms around the province. I think you and I have only talked once on it, so I'm not sure if you're familiar with what we've been doing.
I'm not as familiar with these numbers, but
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Okay. So we add up all the court numbers in any cases where charges have been laid involving a crime against a child.
Okay.
So for March month, we are at 393 cases.
That's just in March, Connie?
Yes, just in March. I will provide a caveat to that number,
Yes.
which is usually what I do. And there were 67 people charged with those 393 offenses. Now, we have to keep in mind, Tim, each time we say that number, it sounds like a lot, but less than 10% of cases ever get reported. And a much smaller percentage, like 2% of the cases that are reported, actually go to court. So we are talking thousands of cases in our province each month. I could give you a list, as I've done before with Patty and Brian, of the types of charges that there are, but I didn't want to cut in too much to the time that you may allot to me this morning to talk about the whole social media thing. And anyone who knows me, for decades I've been saying we're not connecting the dots. And so I've been listening. When you talk about Ariana Kellen's article, there are going to be more trap houses in the future. I can explain why. There's going to be more court cases and more slowdowns, more people leaving the system who need to be there because what they're seeing at HMP. Lynn Moore talked about recidivism and talked about there being no rehab. We're going to see all of that increase unless we start putting the brakes on. So when we talk about social media and Scott Moe's suggestion, the first thing that comes up, of course, is that if we leave this to government, it's akin to Big Brother. I don't see it that way because children are addicted to their phones. They're addicted to social media and technology. There's no question about that. I have numerous studies. I've done a lot of research on this in the past 2 years, more than I cared to. So the reason we can't leave this to parents is because we have such a diverse array of parenting styles. So some people think that they can get controls on this within their own home and whatever they want for their children should be appropriate. But when it comes to children being in schools, we have really, really high expectations of teachers to start with. We have the justice system being affected. We have the social services in our province being affected. We have all kinds of things like education, health. Health is a big one, and justice. So this is why government needs to step up to the plate. When Jonathan Haidt wrote his book in 2024 called The Anxious Generation, it was moms globally who organized to make changes. And Australia became the first country in the world to place a ban on social media for children under 16, and rightly so. Jonathan has since written a book called The Amazing Generation, and it's designed for children 9 to 12. I gave a copy of the book to my eldest grandson for his birthday this year. He turned 11. And what basically that book suggests is how things can change for them, that the die is not cast for them to fall into the same trap as we've allowed our teens to fall into. So it empowers the children to believe they have some agency over whether they have a device or not. It normalizes not having a device. And it's written for that age group. There's a graphic novel included in the book and kind of sessions throughout the book then asking questions and challenging their thinking. So here's what worries me about phone-based childhood.
Okay, go ahead.
We have seen suicide rates in teens double, and in some places triple, since the implementation of, or since the discovery, I should say, of smartphones, especially since the camera, when you have that ability to turn your camera. And there's a lot going on with children who are viewing images online. The amount of anxiety, depression, suicide rates, this is what really should concern people. And people really need to start connecting the dots. I'll give you an example. Bullying, for instance. When a child is bullied in school, they become anxious. Generally,
they do.
They become depressed.
I've seen it play out. You are absolutely right, Connie. Keep going.
Their grades go down, and of course, once they're seen as vulnerable, there's more bullying. They often quit school in their teens. Their ability to earn an income when they quit school is compromised. They could be working at a very low-level income. They can't support themselves, yet they develop addictions to deal with their anxiety and depression. A lot of people are falling into the river, and we're fishing them out later. The reason we need government to step in and step in immediately is to start connecting all these dots between what is happening in our justice system, in our healthcare system, in our school system. They need to do that very soon so that there's not as many people falling into that river. We need government to set a standard. That's why we can't rely on parents to do that, because there are no standards when you're talking a variety of parenting styles. We need standards, and we need them from our government.
I think all of that is super well said, and I love your point because I'm 100% with you. This is all an ecosystem. It all connects. One piece connects to another, and if we don't understand that we live in this ecosystem and we only try and deal with one part of it, the rest of the system is only going to continue to weaken. Maybe part of it gets a little stronger because we fixed one aspect of it. One last question before I let you go, because there's a lineup of callers, and thank you. You've shared so much important information today. Lynn had some hope when I talked to her, as you said, about the justice system and things being done. Do you have hope, or do you see hope that our political leaders are beyond just reacting to the need to do something, are thinking about doing something to improve the system for youth?
Tim, I'd like to be as optimistic as Lynn is, but unfortunately I'm not, because we've been keeping these numbers at Miles for Smiles now, led by Beth Moore-Davids, for over 2.5 years. We're seeing the numbers increase. We're seeing the monthly numbers increase. What concerns me so much here is, with this whole phone-based childhood, is that children are at greater risk. We know from studies that have been done there are online predators. A child is being groomed for a sexual offense every 2 minutes. When we think about the mental and health effects, mental, physical effects, we're allowing children, to be participants in a system that oftentimes they don't understand or want to be involved in. We've seen test scores go down globally. It's actually a known fact now, after 50 years of progress, IQ is now lower than it was in 2012. There's more loneliness, there's lower self-esteem and body image, there's lack of socialization. Children who spend more than 3 hours a day, and many of them spend up to 8 hours a day and sometimes more, they double their risk of poor mental health outcomes with 3 hours a day. So you can imagine when that goes up. We're talking physical needs of children. Now we're seeing in studies that there are neck problems known as text neck or tech neck. We're looking at children's poor eye health. CBC had a doctor here, Dr. Hannaford from the Vision Development Center 2 or 3 weeks ago, talking about the increase in nearsightedness in children, and they're experiencing dry eye, which is something that normally older adults experience because children are blinking less when they're looking at their screens. Their ears, earbuds are blocking the airflow to the ears. They're going to have hearing problems later. They have they're 5 times as likely after 80 minutes of earphones or earbuds of developing hearing problems. Like all of these things, we need to start connecting the dots with all of these government departments who are responsible for all of these health, justice, education issues. This can't be left to the parents. It's too big for that.
Yeah, and as a parent, of a 10-year-old, soon to be 11, I can attest to the ongoing daily challenge. And as you say, there are different approaches in different places.
Well, you should pick up the book, The Amazing Generation.
Yeah, no, when you said that, I wrote
Haidt.
it down. I wrote it down. I'm going to say, read that. We've got to drive to Toronto on Friday, so I'll make him read that. All right, Connie, appreciate your...
And can I just mention that one researcher found one of the things he did was listen in on the amount of chatter in high school cafeterias.
That would have been fascinating.
Yes, and when he walked in to schools where there was no ban, the cafeteria full of students was silent. He walked into cafeterias a month after schools had banned cell phones during school time, and the cafeteria was abuzz. You couldn't hear yourself think. And even the children themselves, after a month of not constantly being on their phones and not having them in school or access to them, their moods improved, their sleep improved, their grades improved, their social contacts improved. Who doesn't want that?
No, exactly. You want humans to engage with humans and not humans to engage with humans solely by machine all the time. Gotta leave it there, Connie. Appreciate your thoughts. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Tim.
All right, take care. That is Connie Pike, child safety advocate with Miles for Smiles. Tom and Ray, you're up right after the break here on VOCM's Open Line. Welcome back. Lots of people on the line. Let me go to Tom Babcock, who's been waiting. Tom, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Tim. How are you?
I am okay. You want to talk about the disability tax credit as people are looking at filing their income taxes. Tell us your thoughts.
Yeah, a little bit more than that. Before I get to that, just I was listening to Connie. I'm 77 years old. My son is 11. I've already written one book, and I think I could write 100 more about the things facing parents and kids that age today. But the reason I'm calling, Tim, was I was reading the Telegram yesterday, and I seen a story in there about a sister and a brother from CBS.
Okay.
And the sister is having difficulties getting the $400 a month that people with disabilities receive from the government of Canada. And the problem deals with guardianship. Apparently, she has guardianship of him issued by a Prince Edward Island court. The Service Canada won't recognize it. So I don't have many of the details, just what was in the story. I know I did spend several years working with a woman to get guardianship of her daughter. And again, I'm not a lawyer, but a lot of this stuff, you can access it online, prepare the application, do the forms and all those things. And her case was a little bit more complicated because it dealt with wills and a whole hockey sock of money that the daughter would get. But it seems that what I've read from this case, it seems just to be a case of guardianship. So the reason for my call is that I have no way of contacting the family, so I'm hoping they're listening, and they can call the hub, and hopefully I'll be able to walk her through the system and help her prepare the application. And then once that's done, she can make an application to a judge and hopefully not have to go through the expense of getting a lawyer.
Well, I think that is very generous of you, Tom. I know you're a very good man. You've done lots of things through the hub and yourself to help people. It sounds, as you describe it, too, not knowing the finer points as you would from the experience that you have, sometimes just getting the right clarification to the right person helps solve all of these things. Anything else you want to add, Tom?
No, that's it. Just that if the lady is listening or somebody that knows the lady is listening, just ask the sister to call the hub. They'll give you my number. as Dave will tell you, I was getting calls day and night, so I had to change my phone number. So, and hopefully when they appoint a disability advocate, they will appoint somebody with a bit of legal experience, because man, oh man, I spend my days with these type of issues. So, hopefully they'll consider that when they appoint somebody. But no, thank you, and thank you for taking my call.
All right, always good to chat with you, Tom. Thank you. Take care. That was Tom Badcock for a long time. Worked at the Hub and still offering to help people. That's, hey, People Magazine, you hear that? Even on the cold island, warm hearts. And they're calling the show, as they always do, to help others. All right, let's go to line 1. We have Ray. Ray, how are you?
Fine. And you this morning?
I'm okay, buddy. I'm all right. What's on your mind?
Excellent. What's on my mind is I think that it's time that we realized that the people of Newfoundland alone cannot incur that large debt of the Churchill Falls project. We have Quebec here. There's a time that there should be a new way of thinking for our politicians. If Quebec is getting the biggest share of the hydro, why not, if they're getting 66% going their way, why not pay $10 billion towards the project instead of, we're going to get $2 billion out of that to start? Why don't they charge, like I said before, every hydro user a surcharge for using our equipment? Otherwise, we should go around Quebec. Somehow the funds need to be raised to get us out of this mess that we are in, because that Lower Churchill became nothing but a mess. And we got a good product there, and instead of giving away, it's time that we got paid for what we have. And it seems like all our resources forever have been just given because we're the poorest province in the whole works. I don't think it should be that way, because we got a lot to offer, and there's a lot of stuff that came out of Labrador alone. And up Labrador, they haven't even got a fit road for you to drive on.
Well, I'll challenge you on that. My dad paved a bunch of them, so some of them are good. Some of the roads in Labrador are good, but yes, I mean, do they have a... Go ahead.
What do the people in Labrador get out of their resources up there? If they go to a hospital in St. John's, they got to pay an arm and a leg. It's cheaper for me to go to British Columbia than those people to come here to the province to get medical help. Everything here in this province is upside down.
Ray, can I ask you a question? Sorry, you go ahead. You finish, sir. I was going to ask you... Pardon me? You finish. You go ahead.
I think it's about high time that our politicians said, listen, no more giveaways. If you're using 60% of our hydro up in Quebec, up in Labrador, you pay 60%. Instead of us carrying the burden here and trying to rob the poorest of the poor people here on the island to pay the highest kind of hydro bills and everything else when they can't afford it.
What I was going to ask you, Ray, I was just going to interrupt you, for a moment and make this point. I mean, you will know that the Liberals, who are now no longer in power, trumpeted a new deal they had with Churchill Falls, with Quebec, on the future of Churchill Falls, which they said was going to address a lot of what you talked about. They promised $1 billion a year. That still doesn't do the trick for you?
Well, I'd like to see up front, if it's going to cost us $15 billion, what is the megawatt hour, the megawatts that Quebec is getting out of that place as opposed to what we're using here?
Okay.
You know, we're paying, our ratepayers are paying double what the ratepayers in these other places are paying. There's something very wrong with that picture. Everybody that's using that resource should be paying equal amounts.
it shouldn't be overly disadvantageous to one party, but we signed a bad deal in the day. We're equally to blame, I would argue. But yes, I think redress, correction, and I think I've heard a lot of politicians, to your point, in Newfoundland and Labrador say, no more giveaways, but we still haven't been able to fix the big giveaway. I got to leave it there, Ray. I appreciate your call. Thank you,
kindly.
Sir.
Appreciate your time.
All right, you take care, sir. We've got bye. We've got Bob on the line just before break here. Bob, what's going on with you?
Hi, thank you for taking my call. This is old Bob Tucker.
Good to talk to you, old Bob Tucker. You sound young, so you bring you that youthful enthusiasm here today.
Yeah, well, I'm a sick man and I'm in trouble, but everybody's not well. But my problem is I scraped up enough money to buy a house in a small community outside of St. John's, and I got a professional electrician to put new power in, and the house was built about 40 years ago by professionals.
Okay.
For fishery products. But anyhow, all the electrical work is done perfect. Perfect demand on a perfect job. And now the latent power tells me I can't get it hooked up until I get some number of the septic tank. How in the world can I get that?
You are asked, what have you, how do you get the number of the septic? So the serial number must be there somewhere, isn't it? But it's underground, so you can't see it. Do you know?
No.
Have you been able to find, you say FPI used to own the house, there is no FPI anymore. Is there a deed somewhere that might give that information? Does your deed have that information?
I'm after searching everywhere. I'm at my wit's end, and everything is all in a shambles, right?
It's really frustrating.
Yes, because, I ain't got the money to put in a new septic system. I bought it as is where it is, you know what I mean? And I really appreciate the man that sold to me. He's a good man, and the people in that small community are the best people in the world, kind, caring, and considerate, and will help you at anything.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Yeah?
I was going to say, Bob, you've put the call out here. You got a lot of people who listen to this show. If anybody knows how Bob can get the number of his septic tank so that he can share that and get his power working, call us. Dave will call you if we get an answer to that. How does that sound?
I appreciate that very much, and I want to thank you for everything you do for the people. You're a good hostess. And me and Paddy Daly were really good friends. Paddy's gone with, too. But I hope you all the best in the world. And may the Lord above look down upon us and help us all. We all need help.
We do, Bob. And that's very kind of you. You stay well, sir. We'll try and get you an answer to your question. All right? Thank you for your nice call today.
You take care. You stay on that. You does a perfect job there, sir.
All right. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. That's very kind. That's Bob Tucker. And if you do know the answer, call us. Dave will get to Bob if you know how to figure that out. It's harder, of course, now that there's no FPI. But somebody out there probably knows an answer. We're exceptionally bright and resourceful people in Newfoundland on our cold, frozen island. Hey, you hear that, People Magazine? Time for the news. Back with more of Open Line after that. Just before I get to Jim, got to say, got a lot of text, which I will get to, and messages about both the conversation with Lynn Moore and the preamble where we talked about trap houses and people's concerns with them. If you want to call about that, this is a safe space. We can take you anonymously. I gather and legitimately understand people might fear retribution from those who are in these apparent trap houses. But, hey, let's talk about it. This is what this program is for and about. It's also about listening to people's concerns about their everyday challenges, and Jim has just had one with a vet. Jim, tell us your story.
Oh, good morning, Tim. A friend of mine on Sunday his dog came home with the front leg broken.
Ooh, poor
he
dog.
brought it to a vet, no name, in the St. John's, and they would not look at the dog unless he had $2,000 to pay them. He said, well, I got $1,500 cash right now on me. They said, well, we can't look at him until you got all the money. I mean, are these doctors looking at a dog who's suffering and say you don't have enough money, we can't fix him?
So what was the rationale? Because $1,500 is 75% of the way there. Did they give anything other than the whole cold, hard cash answer? Are you still there, Jim?
They wanted. They said, we can't look at your dog until you have the money to pay for it.
So what did
I couldn't believe it. A doctor,
so what did your friend end up doing?
And send them out because they don't have.
Really? So what happened to the dog? What happened?
He paid
in the end?
$2,000. He had to go borrow money.
Oh my God!
He just came home with his leg broken, front leg,
and did your friend ask?
A year-old dog, but he's quite attached to it, and anyway, he had to go borrow money too. I just couldn't believe that a doctor, a vet, would look at a dog and then send him out because you don't have enough money to fix him. That's the
Did you ask why, though? Did anybody, your friend, ask why he did that?
But it is.
Jim?
Why?
Yeah, did the doctor ask why, as in why he wouldn't look at him for $1,500? Go ahead.
They looked at the dog and said it was going to cost you $2,000 to fix him. And he said, well, I don't have it, but I got $1,500. They said, well, that's not enough.
But my question around that is, did they explain why they wouldn't do it for $1,500? They didn't explain why they wouldn't do it for $1,500?
All the vets are old. A lot of the vets are
Go ahead,
Jim.
Jim.
Wouldn't do it.
Okay. So how is the dog today?
We need $2,000 or take the dog and go home with him.
How's the dog today?
Well, it's a lot better. They put a cast out of it. The dog is not suffering like he was on Sunday.
Okay, well, that's a good thing.
He just couldn't believe that to go to a doctor and won't look at it unless you got the cash to look for. All these vets, a lot of the vets in Newfoundland, a few of them, are owned by this major company across Canada.
Okay.
And their laws are that if you don't have the money, we don't look at them. They're all bought up by however they arrange with that, with this major veterinarian company that owns all, that's taken over all these veterinarians here. I know of 3. I know my example was I phoned that same company about 5 years ago, not the veterinarian, and they wanted, I think it was $700 because my cat came home with his eye hanging out, and I phoned down, and they asked me, did I have an appointment on Saturday? I said, no, I don't have an appointment because I didn't know the cat was coming home with his eye hanging out. They said, well, if you don't have an appointment, it's $250. I said, well, and then they said, we got to do blood work, we've got to do urine tests, it's going to be about $700. I took the cat, kept him home on Sunday. Monday morning, I went into St. John's and had the eye removed, everything done, $160, and another veterinary. From $700 to $100, I think it was $160, $140. They fixed the cat. And that's what's happening now with the veterinarians in all across Canada.
Well, I know that there's also a push. A lot of people have pet. I was just going to add this, Jim, if you don't mind. A lot of people have pet insurance. You didn't have any pet insurance. Your friend didn't have any pet insurance. Jim?
No, I don't even think he knew about it, but he knows now. He's going to look for it today, he said. to get the vet. But the point I'm trying to explain or say is that I can't believe a doctor would look at a dog and say, well, we haven't got the money, we can't do anything. That, to me, is not a doctor. That's a cash machine.
Well, there's certainly a lot of people who would probably share your view.
There's my problem.
All right. We'll leave it there, Jim. Thank you for the
I
call.
know. A friend of mine had his cat. Anyway, it was nice to talk to you. I haven't heard from you in years and years.
Well, good to talk to you, Jim. I'm sorry your friend went through all of this. Appreciate you calling us and sharing the story. You have a good day. Take care. All right. That story of the vet that Jim just told, I know there are, I don't want to generalize vets. I've known quite a few vets over the years because of the stuff that my family's been involved in, or my mom particularly with the SPCA. I know there are lots of good vets out there. I can't speak to the economics of how it all works right now. As Jim described it, it does seem a little lacking of compassion that they weren't able to deal with the injury until full payment was provided of that poor dog. I'm glad to hear the dog is fine and all's been looked after in the end. I know a lot of people use pet insurance now to address all of these things. But, hey, you have a story like that you want to share, this is the place. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We are going to, when we come back, get recalibrated a little bit here, and we're going to listen to a chat I had with General Tom Lawson yesterday, talking about what is happening in the Middle East, in Iran, with Trump and the way out. And we'll certainly take more of your calls. But when we come back, conversation I had yesterday with General Tom Lawson. Welcome back. We're moving to probably the global issue du jour, and that is what has happened in Iran. As you know, there's a ceasefire, but yesterday there was a lot of concern driven by the comments of the President of the United States that there may be a massive attack on Iran, and to quote the President, a civilization destroyed. I had a chance yesterday to chat with the former Chief of Defense Staff, Tom Lawson, about the President's comments and what's the path out of all of this, because I think that is what so many of us are looking at, and what will the world look like if the New World Order doesn't work? Have a listen to our conversation.
President Trump has given Iran an ultimatum. He had this to say about the 8 p.m. deadline during an update on the war from the White House yesterday.
They have till tomorrow. Now, we'll see what happens. I can tell you they're negotiating, we think, in good faith. We're going to find out. We're getting the help of some incredible countries that want this to be ended because it affects them also. A lot of people are affected by this. But we're giving them till tomorrow, 8 o'clock Eastern Time, and after that, they're going to have no bridges, they're going to have no power plants. Stone Ages, yeah, Stone Ages.
Of course, the President wrote this on Truth Social this morning. He said, "A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will." To talk about the President's ultimatum and try and figure out what it means, delighted to be joined by retired General Tom Lawson, the former Chief of the Defense Staff of Canada. General Lawson, I feel like we are watching some James Bond-esque movie, but unfortunately we are not. This is our reality right now. Just before we dive into this in great detail, I mean, your reaction as somebody who has commanded troops, who has dealt with politicians, your reaction to the President's comments, particularly the one about, ending a civilization.
Well, I mean, it's hard to imagine a president who sees that sort of rhetoric as being presidential. And Tim, when you ask me how I feel as a military man, that's where I'm most comfortable. I can't imagine what the U.S. military is going through right now, right from the chairman on down through the central command commander, not having a clear desired set of outcomes makes it frankly impossible to develop a strategy or even a campaign to achieve effects that line up with a coherent set of outcomes. So, this is it is really slightly dystopian, isn't it?
Great word to describe it. Talking about your military colleagues in the United States, they would have, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but you're the right guy to speak to this about, they would have had for years plans of action related to Iran, plans of extraction, I assume, if there were another hostage-like crisis. Do you see any cogent planning or military thought and discipline in what has played out so far, General Lawson?
Yeah, I see lots of military discipline. I think there's we have to recognize that the American military is enormously professional. They've got capabilities that almost no other country in the world has, although we watch China with growing interest as they develop some of the similar capabilities. So I think more to your question, is there a linkage between that deep military professionalism and a coherence from the political masters to harness that military power in a way that provides good outcomes? And my answer to that is no, I'm not seeing that. Tim, we have to recognize that all of us, yourself, myself, everybody else who observes on this war, we all do so from the facts that are reported to us and what's communicated to us by participants. That's all we can do. And I say that in the hopes that there's a different series of events going on behind the curtain that's more rational than what we see and hear. Because from what we see and hear, this war just makes less and less sense.
General, there has always been propaganda around war. The president may be taking it to a whole new astonishing levels, but equally, we have the Iranian regime saying, there are 14 million people who are going to link in a human chain to prevent these attacks. To your point you made a moment ago, what should we be looking for to figure out what is going on here? What do we need to be paying attention to instead of getting caught up in the propaganda that has always accompanied war?
Right. We've never seen a president engage so deeply in the communications war, and he's putting on really a madman persona, talking about total annihilation. It's less than a year ago where international law and the Geneva Convention actually meant something and prohibited the very targeting of civilian infrastructure to be punitive, the kind of thing the president's talking about right now. And this response from whoever's in charge of communications in Iran seems specifically designed to irritate the president even more. And most of the leaders of the Western world know that's not the way to get what you want out of this president. So I think what we need to do is we have to go to the pundits who are on TV these days, who are trying to translate what the president is saying and what's coming from Iran. And when we go to them, the vice president, who's in Hungary right now, seems to be speaking from a completely different script, as do members of Congress, Republican members of Congress, who are coming on and saying, no, we're not talking about the whole civilization. We're simply talking about pieces of infrastructure. So they're bringing it to a level that seems more acceptable and may actually tie in to some sort of military strategy that has not been rolled out before us. And meanwhile, countries like Egypt, Turkey, Oman, and others may actually be finding some sort of purchase in pressuring the Iranians to come into sort of some negotiations. I think if there's any hope to be had at all, Tim, that's where we're going to find it.
In terms of hope, you talked about mechanisms of world order that existed before, and certainly this president appears to play outside of them, as do many other world leaders who we talk about often, Putin, Kim Jong-un, all of those particular characters. Where do we go from here, though, General? I mean, are we writing a new path forward on how we govern the world? Will we step back? Is it too early to tell? It's just so unsettling. What do you see? What's your compass here?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So what you've reached out to is, when this war comes to an end, what are we left with? And there's a whole lot of stuff that can happen, as you know, between now and when that comes. But you're right. What's left of NATO when this thing comes to an end is the United States under Trump so angry with not having been backed up by NATO. Our NATO partners so horrified by what the United States has become, fallen into absolute lawlessness, that NATO breaks apart, because, as you and I both know, the one member of NATO that we need to have there, that provides a lot of the capabilities and backbone that the other 31 members can't provide, does NATO fall apart. And you mentioned China, for one. China's watching this with great interest and glee, I'll have to say. I think they're delighted to see that American military capabilities are not being shown to be decisive, and they're taking that into their calculations. What effect will that have on Chinese calculations regarding Taiwan and also Russia? They're watching this. You know, they were just about broke. Now they're filling their depleted coffers with huge oil riches to continue to fund their war against Ukraine. And finally, the free world, probably a third to half of the countries in the world, are all watching as the key traditional protector of all those freedoms that we've relied on becomes increasingly irrational. So I'm not sure that's an answer, but I'm agreeing with you that those are the real questions beyond what's going to happen tonight at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, who is Magellan and who has the compass? General Lawson, appreciate the time as always, sir. Great to chat with you.
Appreciate it, Tim.
That was my chat yesterday with General Tom Lawson. Of course, it was about yesterday, and 8 p.m. came and went, and there is a ceasefire, and we're all grateful for that. Look, before we take our break, Bob, if you're still listening, old Bob Tucker, as you described yourself, I would never say that. We've got some information for you. Now, it may also still be a little bit frustrating, but Dave was able to unearth this. If you get a contractor to do up a plan for your septic tank, they should be able to turn it on, and the info should be on the Service Newfoundland site. If you don't have access to Wi-Fi or internet, I'm sure somebody can help you. So, Bob, you want to call Dave, he can tell you that. But again, get a contractor to do up a plan for the septic, and they should be able to turn it on. And we are going to turn it off for the next 3 minutes, do a little bit of a break, and come back with more of your calls here on Open Line. I wanted to give you a bit of a message that I got, or share. I'm sharing it. I'm not going to give it to you, but because I need to edit it a little bit, only to protect the person who sent it to me. But remember, we started the show talking about the trap houses and the great piece that Ariana Kellen did for the CBC on that, and you heard Connie talk about that. One person who I know wrote and said there are so many trap houses in St. John's West. The person went on to write that there is one person who people rely on to call the police, and I won't mention who that is, but that person does do that, and they reach out to him. They always, people find their cars have been keyed. If they have said anything, stolen vehicles, they make things difficult. Neighbors have coordinated with the police, and there's all kinds of cameras in trees, apparently, that people have over there. The city has no ability to enforce their own bylaws easier. Yeah, they won't go through the rest of it because I don't want to betray the person who sent it to me, because it is fairly descriptive. And again, if people are listening and they are looking to get retribution of those people who are calling them out, I won't go too deep there. But this is worrying. If this is so well known and isn't just some kind of Newfoundland myth or legend. We need to find a way to do more about it and give people the enforcement tools, and people should have the ability to live in safe neighborhoods without fear of retribution. That's got to put a stop to it. I'm not saying this is rampant lawlessness. I can't speak to that, but certainly people who are closer to it are not very happy with it and very concerned. Speaking of concerned, there is the possibility, according to the Bank of Montreal, or BMO as they are known now, that oil could reach $150 a barrel because of all that is happening globally with the oil supply because of the war in Iran, though we do have a 2-week ceasefire, at least we do this morning. Yesterday, I also had a chance to have a conversation with Sal Guattieri, who is a senior economist at BMO, about the oil. Have a listen to that. Global oil prices have surged again ahead of the president's deadline for Iran to surrender tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. Crude is trading around $115 per barrel. What would happen if that climbs to $150 a barrel? That is the subject of a new BMO economics report by Sal Guattieri. Sal is a senior economist with BMO. Sal, I'm afraid to ask, but I have to. What happens if it does climb to $150 a barrel? What does that mean for us as consumers first?
Yeah, unfortunately, Tim, that would mean a pretty dicey situation for the economies, both in Canada and the U.S., because that could be a trigger point. Now, granted, oil prices would have to be sustained at around $150 a barrel for several months, but that could be a trigger point for recession risks. We know that oil prices, the run-up so far, the fact that it's pushed up gasoline prices by 35% or so in both countries, and the fact that about 2% of our budget is spent filling up our gas tanks in our cars suggests that the hit to consumer spending, again, if those gas prices were sustained at these levels, could be on the order of over half a percentage point. So when you're talking a further run-up in oil prices and subsequently gas prices, that's when you start to talk about a significant enough impact on consumer spending and the economy that would raise the risk of a downturn. And I mean, it's not like people can turn on a dime. They can't just cut off their spending on fuel. Yes, you can run out and buy an electric vehicle, but that takes time. People do rely on their vehicles to get to work, to do their chores. So demand is pretty inelastic. People just have to keep spending on gasoline almost regardless of the price. So that's where things get difficult. And roughly, well, so far, the run-up in gas prices, again, if sustained, could chop people's spending power by just over $1,000 for the year. Again, that's on average, and only if those prices are sustained. But that's a pretty large chunk of money that comes out of your budget and really hits lower income households much harder than higher income households, unfortunately. So, that would be it would be a pretty dire situation if we get up to $150 a barrel for oil on a sustained basis. That would probably imply gas prices for $6 a gallon in the U.S., over $3 a liter here in Canada. That would be basically a trigger point for a possible downturn.
Prime Minister was asked about this earlier today, Sal. Let's listen to what he said, and then we'll continue our conversation.
I mean, the short answer is because there's a global market, and those countries that have lots of oil and gas see their prices go up alongside with those who don't have that oil and gas. It's the same shifts up in prices in the United States as well. The United States has a lot of oil and gas as well. And so the question becomes, and this is what the government's focused on, is how long is this going to persist, and what can we do to help cushion the blow for Canadians, and that's something we're looking at.
So to the Prime Minister's point or comment there, how long is this going to persist? Let me add to that question. How likely is it we are going to get to $150 a barrel and have some of the impacts you've written about?
Well, we're not expecting oil prices to get up to $115 a barrel, their current price right now. But we have seen that markets are getting increasingly worried about a possible escalation of the conflict in Iran. And if that situation does play out, again, on a sustained basis, yes, you could quite readily get to $150 a barrel, maybe even higher than that. Now, our base case assumption is that oil prices for this month average closer to $100. And that hopefully would be the peak. But of course, that would assume a de-escalation of this conflict, perhaps first a ceasefire and then a longer lasting diplomatic solution that resolves the conflict, reopens the Strait of Hormuz, and most importantly, prevents widespread destruction of the energy infrastructure in the Persian Gulf. So that's our base case assumption. And there we could see oil prices, yes, hold around perhaps $100 a barrel for another month, but then retreat. They won't go all the way back to pre-war levels of $67 a barrel. That seems unreasonable. There will be a longer-term risk premium attached to the price of oil, but we do see the possibility of oil prices then getting below $80, say through next year. And that would at least give our economy time to adjust to these higher oil prices. It certainly would greatly reduce the risk of a weaker economy. At the moment, though, just given the run-up in oil prices, we have reduced our growth outlook for Canada by just over a quarter of a percentage point. So it's already likely to have significant impacts. But again, that's based on our base case view that we're pretty close to the peak for oil prices, and we see a retreat in coming months.
What might be the benefit to public finances for oil-producing provinces like Newfoundland and Labrador, like Alberta, arguably Saskatchewan? What is there some positive in this story for certain provinces in this country and perhaps their citizens?
Well, there is. Certainly for Alberta, it is such a large net exporter of energy products, both oil and to a lesser extent natural gas, that this shock, this run-up in energy prices could ultimately be a net positive. Now, I think there's a threshold. If oil prices do get to certain high levels, perhaps close to $150 a barrel, and gas prices go up high enough that the drain on consumer spending and even business spending more than offsets any net income or wealth gains from the higher oil prices for that province. Probably would avoid a recession, unlike the rest of the country and certainly central Canada. But yes, in the near term, and as long as oil prices do not go terribly high, I think Alberta could ultimately benefit, to a lesser extent Saskatchewan, Newfoundland, and Labrador. But clearly, the rest of the country, net energy consumers, would pay the price. And central Canada, Ontario, already struggling with the high tariffs on certain industries, would be at significant risk of a downturn if oil prices do shoot higher on a sustained basis.
What role for central banks here if we see this ascension of price, or are they going to find themselves equally in a precarious spot in terms of trying to manage the speed at which this is happening and the other economic pressures that are there?
Yeah, this is one of those rare shocks that really does handcuff a central bank. It has stagflation-like implications. It weakens growth, economic growth, and raises inflation. And that's a very tricky situation for a central bank. It only has really one policy instrument, interest rates. And if you raise rates, well, that will fight inflation but hurt the economy and the obverse if you reduce rates. So bottom line is the central bank is really in a holding pattern. They have to remain very cautious and just see whether the negative impacts are greater for inflation and inflation expectations or the economy, and then you start to react. But the problem there is that you're almost always too late in responding because inflation has already gone up in the one case, inflation expectations may have gone up, embedding that the rise in inflation, and then the central bank has to raise interest rates fairly aggressively to get inflation back under control, as we saw several years ago. And the obverse case is if the economy is already weakening in response to the energy price shock, by just delaying your rate cuts, you've already gotten behind the curve, and the economy would be at risk of a downturn. So it's a very tough situation.
Got to leave it there. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for the report. Appreciate it. Back, we've got somebody who's going to talk about trap houses. Stand by for that here on Open Line. Oh, welcome back. We have somebody on the line who would like to talk about trap houses. We're granting them anonymity because it's important to do so. Hello, what would you like to tell us?
Well, the reason why I'm calling is I feel that I'm almost imprisoned by people of criminal backgrounds that have a network in the West End area in which I'm residing right now, and have managed to, basically through my door, while I'm sitting in the kitchen, I can hear them. And I have felt very uncomfortable with certain conversations, and then felt very uncomfortable with being able to even report that to the police. So I have been vague in some things and left it to what damage they were doing to me directly. But it's nonstop. Like, again, even this morning, the way that I am being entrapped by these criminals, well-known on how, well-versed, I should say, on being able to create storylines to get them out of the court system or getting them away from the police based upon what it is that they say, it's been frightening. They're getting favors from professionals, people inside of government, and if someone is on coke, doesn't mean that they are not working for government. It doesn't mean that government workers are not using sex workers. These people have access to all of those government files, all of those government positions of power, and doing so without any paper trail of money. It's all done for favors. And they're able to just totally walk around as if they own the street. They gloat about owning the police. And the police do nothing about it because as soon as a police officer comes around, it's like they're in court. It's like the police have somehow been conditioned by these criminals to know what's going to happen in the court, how is that going to sound in the court, and then to avoid the fact that they know that they've already won the court case based upon what it is that this guy is saying, based upon the questions that they're asking them. They do nothing. I don't think it's conditioning of the police that is scary. I don't think that they are quite aware of that is how these pimps and these people of the trap houses are managing to control the police. And they know it, and they use it, and they taunt it, and they gloat about it. They are non-stop. It doesn't matter if a police officer came to the door, threatened them about anything or not to do this. It's only incentive for them to come at you even faster, harder, or using the most subtlest of ways, then mocking you, yelling you, having their friends walk around in the neighborhood saying and murmuring things to intimidate, to frighten. To me, Tim, I feel that when it comes to Newfoundland and Labrador housing and them taking advantage of properties within Newfoundland and Labrador housing, there needs to be a safety program where it is actually used. People such as this that have managed to manipulate the situation. You can't afford to put them in prison. The courts are costing too much money. At least in Newfoundland and Labrador housing, some sort of program, or going to a federal system where housing and the police can work hand in hand. Now, before you get to go and have your route and controlling everything, they should be able to move. You're causing trouble, you've got to go on the move, so that they're not making all of these particular connections, or if they got them in these silos like Buckmaster Circle or Chalker's Place or whichever, because this person and these people have threatened to put me down in Chalker Place. They already got their place down there. I got to learn the lesson of how much power that they have.
So how long have you been, sorry to interrupt first.
They should be watching them. They should be allowed to be watched because they are criminals. Sorry,
so how long have you been putting up with all of this? How long have you been trying to break free from the imprisonment, as you describe it?
Well, I was at one location, and they forced me in this location. I was warned about this guy and his mom by somebody who, at the time, I didn't know was a criminal. And so I've been at this for 2 years. I have gone through a living absolute nightmare in this particular location, and I mean nightmare. My power bill is going up. They stifle the power. They're after opening the door nighttime to get the power bill up, and then he laughs at what he's doing. So he's letting you know that he's doing it. There's nothing that you can do about it.
And you've reported all of this to housing, and they're not doing anything?
They are related to people in Newfoundland and Labrador housing and have gloated about a very high position person within housing being one of her customers. And as well, I did, and then an incident of the person that I was complaining about burst at his way in. I had housing going and yelling at me at the front door and trying to force their way in here when after one of his sabotages the guy had done, I had straightened out. So what they were expecting to find when they came in here, they didn't find, because at the end of the day, that their goal is I got to get out of here because there's a plan for this place, and that plan must happen, and I have to know that he has the power to be able to do it, and there's nothing that I can do about it. And then prior to that, I did have other circumstances in another unit that put me into this location. I could go on, but I know.
We got about a minute here, and I do appreciate you calling and sharing the story. Why? Has anybody responded in a positive way to you and to your circumstances, or as you have described it, they're all, as you sense it, all part of one big circle, and nobody's willing to go that extra step to try and break up the circle?
I feel like a targeted individual. It certainly seems like the one that would pass you on. I'll get you to call this person, or I'll get you to call that person, and all the same shutdowns or mockeries is what you get faced with. And then, as you go and you try to complain, if you do get a good ear, the storyline in which you are telling them is, I guess, too much, or they think they may have helped, and people are not double checking, or you can't get back to the person that when you do have that positive ear. So it has been quite difficult. So can you imagine a child in care? I mean, we've been hearing about the Aboriginal community for a long time. The only difference is now, it's not like a difference as in one's better than the other. My heart always went out to the Aboriginal community, but that's hitting everybody now. That is what they're talking about, is hitting. Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks very much. That's a tough story, and of course that's one person's perspective. I'm not taking away from it. It's reflective of what we saw today. CBC, the Ariana Kellen piece. If other people want to call and share, and we have a conversation about this, I'm looking to get as much information as I can, and we talk through this as much as we can. It seems to be an issue of real concern, not just for the lady who called, but for others. Okay, time for our 11 o'clock news. When we come back, more of VOCM's Open Line.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Tim Powers in here today and the rest of the week. Just before we go to Colin on the line, I want to pass on a message that was shared with Dave, and it references the call we just had with Newfoundland regarding the trap houses and the concern people have with the way Newfoundland and Labrador Housing Corporation and others are dealing with the issue. Person writes, it's the same issue at the city-owned houses. They, in fact, the city house officials running their housing tell you to call the landlord-tenant board when neighbors complain. Criminal enterprises are undertaken in their property by their tenants. Big issue finally getting some press. Well, we're happy to give it more press and more coverage, so please give us a call. We'll talk about it. Let's go to Colin on the line. Colin, what's going on with you today, sir?
Good morning, Mr. Powers. How are you today?
I am good. You and I often have great chats about the state of the world. You must feel concerned, as I do, about it all. Do you, Colin?
Yeah, I'm very, very concerned, and it takes a lot to get me to run around with my hair on fire. But yesterday was that day, you know. And I'm sure that.
Well, I mean, just to pause you for a second. I mean, how couldn't it be, right? I mean, look, you can tolerate so much of what Trump does, and you've studied a lot related to war and conflict. And as I said in chat with Tom Lawson, propaganda and the like is part and parcel of this all. But when a president of the United States says he's going to end a civilization, yeah, that makes us all frustrated. Anyway, sorry, Colin, you go ahead.
No, it's you live in the navel-gazing capital of Canada, and even up there, in that great sausage factory up there on the Ottawa River, even up there, people were getting outside the bubble and thinking of anything except their own egos yesterday. So it's it's quite disturbing. I just over the Easter weekend, he was on through social there, and the profanity was something you wouldn't even hear on George Street at 3 o'clock in the morning, And it's just the threats that he's making to Iran. He's going to just totally obliterate a country of 92 million people. And you're quite right. This is not about politics. This is not where you park your vote, whether you're liberal or conservative or you're independent or whatever. This is about lunacy. And this man has the second largest nuclear stockpile in the world. He has exclusive command and control of that. And just as an aside, the man who has control of the largest nuclear stockpile is on a war rampage in Ukraine. And, Chinese are looking at all this. And what makes you think, or me think, or anybody else who's, thinks outside the box like we do, that the Chinese are not going to take advantage of this and say, maybe this is an opportune time to move in on Taiwan now.
Yeah, that's just let me stop you there, because this is what Lawson and others have said, people who actually know it. The Chinese are laughing as Donald Trump does what Donald Trump does. The Chinese are doing what they often do well. They stand back, they watch, they plot, they plan. They do it with more discipline and rigor. I mean, you have to have a degree of admiration for their approach, even though I certainly don't admire a lot of what they do or all of what they do. But, yeah, it's so concerning. I mean, Colin, as you look at this, where are we going? That's the question I asked General Lawson. Where are we going? Because this too will end, but what is world order right now?
It's stochastic. It's not deterministic. Yeah. It's completely random. I don't know. And I'm not afraid to say I don't know. And there's a lot more people who have a lot more skin in the game and a lot more street cred and academics than I do on this matter, like the former chief of defense staff and others. They probably don't know either.
No,
it's just what side of the bed does Trump wake up on in the morning? Who's he going to attack today? He's going to go into Caracas, or he's going to invade Greenland, or maybe he'll go. I don't know. Maybe he'll invade Paris. I have no idea. Or maybe he's going to look at a map and say, that island sitting right in the Gulf of St. Lawrence there, Yeah, they got a lot of critical minerals there in oil and gas. I think we're going to take that now. That's in America's national interest that we seize that island, Newfoundland,
I was talking to, and I think a lot of people heard this yesterday. There were a lot of commentators in the United States saying, well, your Congress is on an Easter break as we are on a parliamentary break in Canada. But where is the bigger leadership in the U.S.? If Joe Biden were demonstrating some of the characteristics that Donald Trump currently is through the way he's all over the place, the way he's writing, Congress would probably be recalled. People would be acting. Why aren't a broader group of American leaders acting in your mind? Maybe they are and we don't hear about it, but it seems extremely discouraging.
Yeah, I think it's time to show up, stand up, and speak up. That's my motto, what you have to do in life. And if you're not doing all three of those, just sit down and shut up. Pretty much. Say nothing. You either got a spine, Tim, or you don't.
Yeah, no, and when the history of America in this era is written, it's going to be fascinating, not just for the fact that Donald Trump was elected, and that speaks to lots of problems in the U.S., some of which we have in Canada, too. Let's not give ourselves complete absolution. But where are the other leaders? Because you think about all the times in the U.S. before, whether it be around slavery, whether it be around the challenges around the Cuban Missile Crisis, there were always voices that were challenging the administration of the day, and from within the administrations of the day saying, hey, do better or look at it differently. But there seems to be none of it.
No. Everybody's strangely silent. I don't know what's going on in the Situation Room or any of these other secret venues in and around Capitol Hill and the White House. But nobody is speaking out publicly about what's going on here. And what scares me the most is you referenced the Cuban Missile Crisis. You're a student of history, and neither of us were around at that time. But
thankfully, Colin, we're still young, yes.
And Kennedy put a line in the sand for Khrushchev. Mm-hmm. And he said, you cross that line, we're going to go to war. And he made an address to the nation, a televised address. He told the people, the American people, what was happening, what was going on with the Soviets, and what was happening in Cuba. And he viewed that as a national security threat to the United States and to the Western Hemisphere. And he was right. Those missiles would have been less than 100 miles off the coast of Florida, and they would have been a threat to the United States and therefore Canada. But the thing is, he threw a line in the sand with Khrushchev, and Khrushchev had the wherewithal to turn around and back down. Now, there were back channels, with the Turks and different things as an aside, back channeling with Turkey, and they were trying to reach agreements there to save face and get an off-ramp. But the thing was, Kennedy drew the line, and he knew either Khrushchev was going to back down, which he did, or he wasn't going to back down. But in any event, Kennedy knew that if he didn't back down, he would have to confront Khrushchev and the Soviets, and we were going to be into an armed conflict. This is not the same thing. Trump is constantly doing this, walking up to the line, challenging whether it's Iran or NATO now with Greenland, or making veiled threats, walking up to the line with all this shooting off his face. And this is going to get him into trouble, whether it's with the Russians or the Chinese or somebody else, or the North Koreans maybe. Something might happen on the Korean Peninsula with China and North Korea. I don't know. But he's playing a very dangerous game, and he treats this all as a New York real estate deal.
Yeah,
it's all bluff and bluster. Yeah. You can't do that, right?
No, you can't. I got to leave it there, Colin. Great to chat with you. Try to not let the hair catch on fire too much, though. It's hard these days. I'm with you, buddy. Good to chat. Take care.
Cheers.
Bye. That's our friend Colin. When we come back, Deputy Mayor Ron Ellsworth and Ben Sparks both standing by. We'll talk to them in a moment here on Open Line. Welcome back. Well, we've talked a lot in the show so far about some of the challenges people are encountering in St. John's around trap houses that are owned by the NLC, and another person saying that the city equally has some troubling properties that people are occupying. We'll touch on that in a little bit in a moment, but I wanted to get Deputy Mayor Ron Ellsworth on because because I heard Ron this morning, and he got me with a quote that he made in relation to a discussion the council was having last night about heritage homes, and Ron said something to the effect that Shani Duff would be proud. Well, Ron, I got a message from Shani the other day, not related to heritage homes, but related to another passion of hers. So Shani was a huge advocate, still is, because she's still alive and with us, for maintaining the heritage of St. John's. What is going on at City Council now? You've got a new 10-year plan. What's the thinking coming out of the council on heritage and how it plays in our city?
Yeah, first of all, just to speak about Shani, when I first term on council back in 2005, she was very kind to me and certainly a mentor in process procedures. We differed in how we want to be where we were, but a lot of respect for sure, and certainly very kind. So on the heritage piece that we're talking about at the meeting yesterday, it was about a developer who wanted to remove some characteristics of a building while characteristics themselves are very small. The implications are very big. So these dormers are a part of the heritage building that's designated. The dormers themselves have a very high historical value in the building itself and other buildings. So for us to allow those dormers to be removed, we would have had to lower our heritage standards to allow that. So this is not just about a property in one place. If this was just a property and it was problematic, I think everybody around our table and staff table would say, yeah, okay, we can work through that. But this is a bigger sample of the bigger issues that we're finding in trying to preserve and protect the heritage buildings. I think there's 158 of them that have been designated with request of the property owners. So they came in, knew what they were coming into, knew what their goals and objectives were, and for different reasons want to tap into heritage status. And that's the bigger issue on this one that, for me, you look at how the rules are applied, you look at what rules we have, and you got to try and be, fair and consistent in how the rules are applied.
Yeah, and I think any developer, anybody's who's on the other side of this, that's what they want. You know this from your own experience in business. Predictable and reliable, and the ability to arbitrate when you feel that isn't the case. Let me ask you a broader question about heritage, and again, it connects with Shani. I mean, as a young person, I remember this was a passion of Shani's, and she fought with many others to protect the heritage of St. John's. I've seen your colleagues make the point that when we sell St. John's to the world and even to our local occupants, protecting that history is important. Is that still true, Ron?
Very true. But also, we also got to be understanding and respect private properties and respect private ownership. And that's where the real balance comes into it. This property in the Battery, for example, that's got a fair amount of attraction on that one. We all see the value. We all see why the community is concerned. But the reality is this property was privately held by the family, and the family had opportunities to have it designated if they wished, and they didn't wish to do so. Okay. And for us to go in and force ourselves in here, what I'm saying is political overreach. While we understand the value, we might want to do something. So in this process right now, the proponent has to do a heritage report for the building itself, not the property, the building itself. And when that report comes back, council will have some decisions to make if they want to designate that building or not. Okay. If there's value and council wishes to designate, that actually helps the developer in getting more density in that building. So it's counterproductive to what some in the community are looking for. For us, then what happens is, because it's properly zoned for development, the developer, the property owner, will go through our development staff, development regulations. If they meet all the outcomes that are required under the zoning and the regulations, there's no decision for council to make on this property.
Okay. That's helpful on that. Let me ask you a general question. I don't mean to blindside you, but I know you're on top of the news. And as I say, it's general. CBC reporting earlier concerns people have about trap houses in St. John's, and they speak specifically of Newfoundland and Labrador housing properties, which are provincial government properties. We've had some calls to suggest there may be city-owned properties, city-owned houses that are subject to similar kind of behaviors. Less the responsibility for the properties, but more in your perspective as deputy mayor, do we, from what you know, have a problem in Newfoundland, in the city of St. John's, with too much criminal behavior happening at publicly owned housing?
So, Tim, obviously for you, if you're somebody living adjacent to a property that's problematic, that is an issue and that is a concern. So, full stop. Let's not talk about development one way or the other. That's a full stop. That is a problem that we need as a community to be looking at. So, to unpack this a little bit, so as a landlord, we own properties in the city of St. John's. As landlords, we have some opportunities to deal with peaceful enjoyment of property. We have opportunities to deal with cohesiveness in buildings and those things. Mm-hmm. So as landlords, we have some tools that can be used if there's activity that's causing disruptions that we can deal with as a landlord.
Okay.
As City of St. John's, us dealing with properties or problematic criminal activity at properties, we have no tools to deal with criminal activity at properties. But if your adjacent property owner is leaving garbage in the backyard, for example, or the property's run down, or there's building code infractions, or those type things, we can certainly address those through our regulatory processes. But if Tim or Ron is in a house carrying out criminal activity, but the building code requirements are all met, we have no tools to deal with that. And that's where our partnership with the RNC comes in for us, because we work with the RNC very closely. We all understand the struggles of the structure of the RNC. We very much appreciate the men and women on the front line who are working at the best with the tools they have. I think the RNC staffing is a major issue. We all recognize that. For anybody pretends it's not, they've lost some very good men and women recently because of different challenges within the structure. We need certainly more enforcement on the street. We need more collaboration in the street. We need stronger mental health and addiction support on the streets. And we've been certainly lacking in that in the city from the provincial government. We're seeing some movements now with the province, and hopefully the current provincial government's commitment to safer communities will bear some fruit and help the citizens of St. John's be safer and feel safer.
All right. Ron, appreciate you dealing with that question. That wasn't what we originally intended to talk about, but I know you're always open to talking about the key issues that are of concern to the residents. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Always appreciate you, Tim. Always there to speak anytime. Take care.
Thank you. That's the Deputy Mayor of St. John's, Ron Ellsworth, talking about a particular heritage housing issue, heritage in general, and responding to some of the calls we've gotten today of concerns people have in different public housing properties about their safety and well-being. Dave, what I'm going to do, hang on, Ben Sparks. We're going to take a break. When we come back, Ben Sparks and then Sam here on VOCM's Open Line.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back. Last half hour of the show. Let me go to somebody who's been waiting patiently, and I appreciate that. That's our friend Ben Sparks. Ben, among other things, helps oversee the Morrison Scholarship, which he established in memory of his mother, and I've had the great pleasure of speaking at one of those events and standing him up at another because of a snowstorm. And Ben also does some political commentary work, and we'll get to the political commentary in a minute, but you've got some news on the scholarship front, do you, Ben?
Thanks for having me, Tim. And we'll get you third time's a charm. We'll get you to speak at the next event. Hopefully, we won't schedule it with a snowstorm. I just wanted to let everybody know, particularly any teachers, parents, students. I mean, I hope students aren't listening right now. You should be in class, but if you are listening, the scholarship application period is opened for this year. We'd just love to talk a little bit about who that's for and how.
Go ahead.
So we set up the scholarship, as you know, a number of years ago to encourage students to pursue studies in politics, public policy, a field relevant to civic engagement, and just generally trying to encourage people to pursue careers in public service, because we talk a lot about STEM and other fields, but this is a field that affects us all, and that's really important. And you're no stranger to this, obviously, Tim. The need to have an educated electorate and citizenry is super important, more important now than it's ever been. So the scholarship, it's modest. It's $3,000 for the year, but grade 12 students going to their first year of undergraduate studies in a related field, as I say, politics, public policy, something like that, one of the humanities, they should check out the scholarship and submit an application by May 31st to be considered for that scholarship. So like I said, it's open to anybody going into those fields. We've had some great applicants and some great recipients in the past from right across the province. So you or someone you know could be next.
Yeah, I've met some of them at one of the events we did, and they were really appreciative, too. It makes a big difference to a young person, particularly, they don't have to be super young, but in this day and age, if they can get some help with their study and do something they're passionate about. Just before we leave the subject of the scholarship, where, Ben, can people go to get information?
You're a professional, Tim. I forgot to plug the website, obviously. It's morrisonscholarship.ca. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. That's morrisonscholarship.ca.
All right, I encourage you to go there. Now, while I got Ben, I pick his brain for a couple of minutes. The Liberals, Ben, big convention happening this weekend in Montreal. Of course, 3 by-elections on Monday. The hope of the government is they win all 3. They previously held these seats, although one was taken away from them by the court. And affordability seems to be rearing its head again. Anybody who's driven a car will tell you why that is. What does the Prime Minister need to do over the next number of days heading into the by-elections to both address affordability and to help his chances, particularly in the Quebec seat where they are a little bit more vulnerable?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. And obviously, as you say, Liberals federally and provincially, lots of folks will be gathering in Montreal to attend the convention. I'll just say off the top, if folks, it's probably not most of your listeners' ideal way to spend their time, but if you ever get a chance to go to one of these conventions, they are super interesting. They're great opportunities to network, meet people from across the country. It's not like a big collective Kool-Aid drinking exercise. Like, it is really fun and exciting to be in the city and to meet familiar faces from around the country. So just a small plug for that. If you ever get the chance to go, I'd encourage people to do that. Part of the democratic process. In terms of what the Red Team is hoping to do federally, I think obviously maintain the current momentum that they've been feeling and that's been reflected in the polls. The by-elections, I don't think will be surprising. I think broadly, it will be surprising if they don't hold those seats. As you say, the seat in Quebec in Terrebonne is the one to watch in terms of what happens between the Conservatives and the Bloc in particular, for a bit of a bellwether on how Quebecers are feeling about separatism, particularly with a provincial election coming up, as we know. In Newfoundland, related to Churchill Falls, there's a provincial election in Quebec happening in October. The PQ are doing quite well in the polls, so that's going to be interesting to see how the separatist vote turns out in Quebec. And then, as you say, cost of living, price of gas is crazy at the moment right across the country, and so some action on that is probably in the offing, I would think. I think the Conservatives had a decent message week getting out the need to lower the gas tax federally, and obviously there's a provincial debate happening about that as well.
Yeah, and the Prime Minister shaded at that yesterday, so we'll watch all of that. Ben, I would say the only more exciting thing, arguably, in Montreal right now is to see if Cole Caulfield gets his 50th goal. So I don't know if they're playing this weekend, but people can watch Alex Newhook and Cole Caulfield go after his 50th. Appreciate the time, my friend. Thank you for calling in.
Always a pleasure, Tim. Thank you.
All right, that's Ben Sparks. And again, remember, morsonscholarship.ca. Tell your kids, or if the kids are listening, to have a look at that. It's a great funding vehicle for people looking to learn and have some help with that. Okay, we're going to go to Sam, who's on the line. Sam is a fisher. Sam wants to talk about the food fishery. Sam, I've had quite a few chats about that over the last number of weeks, both on this show and in the program I do. Most of the fishers who have called are still pretty frustrated that the federal government, has not extended the period for the food fishery, which is something the Conservatives propose. Where do you sit on all that?
Well, yesterday, Barry and his committee, they had a meeting with one of the top officials at the DFO, and I think they made an excellent presentation down there, and it seemed like they were really heard right now. And they're hoping within the next couple of weeks that they will have a meeting with the Minister of Fisheries, Joanne Thompson, and because she's after meeting with FFAW, and she met with the tour boat owners, as far as I know, and they're hoping that they're going to end up in a meeting, and we're still cautiously optimistic about getting our changes that we're looking for with the fishery. And I'm usually a pretty positive person, and I still think that we will get some changes and everything, right? No, because there is a lot of people calling in lately. I know clock is running again, right? We're into April month now. There's only another month or two, right? And we should be back on the water right now when it's nice and civil. But it's going to be really nice to be able to hear if they come in with the changes for 7 days a week. No.
I remember, and you will know better than I, but I think Minister Thompson, when she and the 4 Liberal MPs voted against Jonathan Rowe's motion, made the point, and there's some merit to it, I guess, that, look, part of the challenge with going to 7 days is managing enforcement and making sure people are there and making sure we have the staff to do it. Is that a legitimate argument? May that be one of the reasons this hasn't happened to date?
No, I don't think that was I wouldn't give that a lot of merit, really, because right off the bat, I knew when that bill was presented by the PCs. Now, the Liberals are not going to have the PCs take any credit for changing the food fishery. So I think we were a little bit out on that one, not thinking that was going to go through, right? Now, it was a great bill and everything like that, and a great effort and everything. But that's the way I look at that one right now. If there's going to be changes, it's going to come from the Liberal government, or the minister, not from the opposition, no.
Got to ask you about cod, if you don't mind, because you obviously are somebody who knows the water. And I go back to the example I keep using because it's the one that rings truest in my head. And that is, for years and years prior to the cod closure in 92, fishers said, hey, there aren't as much fish out there. Over the last number of weeks, DFO released its new number, said the cod were in the healthy zone, northern cod in the healthy zone at 540,000 tons, I believe was the number. Spoke to Alberto Wareham at Icewater, speaking on behalf of the processors, said, that the DFO should up the quota this year. A couple of different environmental groups have said, hey, let's be careful here. Are you seeing more cod? What do you think should happen with cod?
Well, I know for down in Bonavista Bay, where I go fishing too, right? Down there, the first July month, there is thousands of fish on the go.
Really?
When we get in, yes, you could go out any time at all right now and just no problem getting your fish. But once you get into August month and then the gillnets and everything is out on the grounds, it's much harder then to go get your fish because you're not getting really right on the good marks and everything like that with nits and things like that there, right? So that piece has a little bit to do with it too. But once you get into the middle of August, it seems like the fish moves offshore again to deeper waters.
Okay.
That's what I've been finding this past few years. And September month, that week that they have on September, there's nobody down around there where I'm to that even gets out fishing. It's always too rough, right? Windy, things like that. So people is not going to go taking the chances for the going out for to try to get fish when it's really stormy,
when it's rough
and
and
things like that.
yeah.
Yeah, there's no comfort to that. No.
And just last one for you, because again, I don't know it, I don't see it as much as you do. The size of the fish, are they the right size? Are you seeing all of that when you see them, or when you pull them, when you have pulled them out of the water? Do they look healthy? Do they come across as being back?
Well, once the capel and stuff comes around, right? Because first part of it, if there's no capel around like that, or herring and things like that, you get the fish is not quite as good, right? You get blackberry into it, and that really sort of spoils the fish, stuff that they eat on the bottom of the grounds. But once the capel's around, and the fish is perfectly then, right? It's no problem whatsoever. You can go out, I'd say, in probably about 15, 20 minutes to max off the harbour, and you'd have your fish and come on back in again. And size-wise is, I call it more like trap fish, not like trawl fish, because trawl fish, if you got a trawl out, is you get way bigger fish on it, right?
Okay.
But to me, it's what normal cod trap fish, and that's a good size,
Okay. I appreciate the call, Sam. We'll keep watching this. Thank you for answering my other questions as we try and get a sense of the call to have a greater total allowable catch this year. You gave us some good insight on that. Thank you.
Oh, you're kindly welcome. Thanks for taking my call again, too.
All right,
Talk to you when we get some announcement.
All right, I like that. All right, that is Sam. He's a fisher, and he gave us some great insight there. Okay, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we got a few extra minutes. Now, you don't want me to fill it with this other breaking news. I mean, this is very important. It's too bad we are not a visual medium, but Justin Trudeau and Katy Perry have released some official couples photos, and they look wonderful in those photos. Don't want me to talk about that. Let's talk about trap houses and other things. Time for a break, and back with our last few minutes of Open Line in a moment. All right, we're lucky we have another caller who's going to come on anonymously. Again, we want to protect the callers to talk about trap houses. Hello, how are you today?
Not too bad. And how about yourself?
Well, I'm a bit thrown off hearing all this stuff about the trap houses. What's your connection to this story?
I'm one of them.
Okay. And what are you going through?
Hell. To the point it's fallen on deaf ears.
Mm-hmm.
The first person to actually listen, well, you're twice today, is Ariana Killand. Excellent. It needs to be put out there. People do not understand these places should be for families, but there's people that can't have their families here because of what we have to put up with.
Give us an example for people of what in terms of what an average day or week is like, what you have to live through that other people maybe have no sense of.
Okay, well, how can you function as I work? So how can you function if you have no sleep? Because of these houses are like the hotels, coming and going. You don't know who's there. Sometimes 20 bodies or more up at night, 3 o'clock in the morning, banging at the door. You got to be up for an early shift. Mm-hmm. How can you make it to work and actually mentally function if your head is not fully there because of a loss of sleep? How can someone focus on raising their child living in these houses to the point you have to push them out of the house that they're supposed to live in with you, but you can't have them here because of it? because you don't want them to grow up around the stuff around you, you know?
And it sounds like you've tried to talk to people about it. And what's the typical kind of response you get?
Well, when you call up housing, they say, you know, it's a police response. Okay? So you call police, and then it becomes, it's a Newfoundland housing response. Yes, it's supposed to be a Newfoundland housing response, but it's like they think their hands are tied and they can't do nothing, but it's their job. If I was a regular landlord, it would be my job for peace and enjoyment of taking care of my tenants. So, you know, why is it not their job? You know, I think they should be doing more investigations. Yes, I know it's government run, so their hands are tied for certain things, you know. But, like, even investigating, like, you know, do you have a criminal record? I think that should be allowed to be asked. Do you know what I mean? It's how do you get to abide by the rules, not abide by them, and keep getting away with it? You know what I mean? So, like, I work in a house. They were telling me there was one girl in housing. She caught units on fire many years ago. And they said to this day she's still in the units. Do you know what I mean?
Really?
Like she's after burning down a few units. Yeah, and I just found this out today while I was at work. And they were telling me they've been in housing for many, many years themselves. And they said, this is what happens. And I was like, are you serious? This is scary, you know? So to have even try to raise a family knowing this is happening, you know, it gets even worse for the person that's having to suffer through it.
It sounds like to me, too, because I don't know this to be true, so I'm going to ask you, but because they're in so-called housing units, people may think they shouldn't pay the same attention to it. There may be a prejudice against people who live in housing units.
Yeah.
I mean, if this were in the east end of St. John's, you know, on Circular Road, maybe there's a whole different response. Is that a fair assumption that just because you live in housing, you're perhaps not getting the same fair treatment you were if you were in another part of the city?
We don't work. You know, people think, oh, these people don't work. A lot of us do work. There is a lot of good people. But the good people are starting to mentally decline because having to live next to this stuff. You know what I mean?
So what, I mean,
like,
for
I'm
you...
lucky to say I never ever touched drugs in my life.
Good
but,
for you.
You know, it's doctors like telling me I got to go on medication because I'm suffering with the mental health of it all, but I shouldn't have to because I was a normal, healthy person before I moved in here.
Yeah, and that's so true. So just again, so people understand, I mean, we hear every day, even in St. John's, it's expensive to live. It's not really an option for you, I'm guessing, at this point in your life to move out into a different unit not controlled by Labrador Housing, Newfoundland and Labrador Housing. Is that true? Your options are limited, and people, again, should appreciate that?
Yeah, because rent is so high, you know. And I understand why rent is so high because the cost of living is so high. You know what I mean? But like, it's hard to move sometimes. Now I'm hoping the best to do what I can soon with what I got. But you know, sometimes you're kind of just stuck because of all this. You know, because of the cost of living. And the more you make, the more housing takes. You know what I mean? But say if you run the trap house. You know, they're making money. They're pulling in probably more money than we are. And they get to live there rent-free.
Yeah, it's really concerning. Got about a minute here. You've got the airwaves now. You've got people's attention. What would you like to see government officials at the provincial government do? What should they be doing?
An overhaul, a change. You know, like I agree with Jim Dinn a while back. It's a mess, and it is a mess, and it's probably going to take even years to fix it. And we could talk here all day because I could even tell you some conditions of these units that are not even fixed. You know what I mean? They need a good overhaul. They need new change. A social worker, one good social worker housing did have. I got to give them that. And you know what? I guess it got to her. She quit. But she was, honest to God, an angel. A blessing in disguise, you know? And then it's just like, okay, 4 new housing workers, you know? So, like, who is who, what's doing what, you know? But we're never informed, you know what I mean? It's just like till you got to go researching for someone. So then when you have issues, You don't know who to contact because, oh, sorry, we're no longer.
Yeah, and to your point about your mental health, and it just wears you down. I mean, never mind what you're living through, and then trying to find a solution. Oh, Joe said to go to Jack. Jack said to go to Jane, and you're just playing this endless game of chasing people. And your wherewithal, you got to live your life. You got to do things, and all these calls and emails and non-answers. It's exhausting. Well, thank you for calling us.
My children are my my children are definitely my priority as well, right? So it's not only I'm having to suffer; it's my children.
Yeah.
If
mom is struggling, mom struggles, the family struggles. I just got to give you about 30 seconds because we have to go to news. What else would you like to add?
No, just hopefully Newfoundland Housing and the government wake up. Wake up for once and realize what's happening, what people are telling you. Come check it out.
All right. Well, thank you for calling. I'm sorry you're going through what you're going through, but I appreciate the courage it took to call, and we'll keep on this story. You have a good day if you can. All right. That was our last call on Trap Houses. Want to keep talking about this. It seems like it's an issue that really needs some attention. Thank you for listening today. Thank you to Dave Williams and Greg and everybody. We'll be back tomorrow with more of Open Line.